All right, a nighttime video out here on the porch with the crickets and the harmony of the forest.
Can you hear the angels singing?
Yes.
I thought that was me.
Crickets.
And let's see,
Half moon.
we've spotted the half moon, whatever that means.
2 weeks. You got no,
Full moon for us.
that's one more week. Half moon means we're 1 week from
Yeah,
something.
but we've sighted the half moon, so it's official. Even though we're not in Jerusalem. Anyway, let's, Yahuwah calls heaven and earth to testify. Heaven and earth. And then Messiah said the same thing in accordance to Torah. Let's read that verse real quick. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah of the prophets. I didn't come to destroy, but to complete. For truly, I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. So what's this about him calling heaven and earth as witnesses? He does this quite often.
But he didn't say heaven, New Testament there, he didn't use heaven and earth as a witness, but he said till heaven and
they
earth pass away.
But that kind of carries off what Yahuwah had said earlier.
So the reason we're going to do this video here is just a question of saying, you know, we have these verses, you can memorize verses and get points in your Sunday school class, you know, for having extra verses memorized. Heaven and earth is a witness. What in the world does that mean? That's actually, it's kind of poetic, but it's virtually meaningless. Why would Yahweh say that heaven and earth will bear witness, number one, or testify or as witnesses, or even that not one jot or tittle can be done away from the Torah, extracted from the Torah, eliminated from the Torah, as long as heaven and earth endure? Why would he say that? Now, I've heard it said, studied probably 40 years ago, where glass windows actually receive an imprint of voices, and if you had a laser or some kind of way to read the same way you'd read a CD or a DVD, you'd actually have layer upon layer of all these different recordings ever since that glass was made. And that the rocks also, because glass is made of sand, rocks also, some maybe more aptly than others, some variety of rocks, I would imagine crystals or something, but the point is, rocks can record voices. So perhaps that's what he's talking about. How's heaven bearing a witness? Is he talking about the angels who have, you know, I've heard it said that there's some angels with notebooks and their job is to sit there and literally write down things that people are doing, and that we'll be faced with that in the future, possibly. But he mentioned it a couple places in Deuteronomy. Is just those two, and then the
Deuteronomy 4:26, he says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. And then Deuteronomy 30:19, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you. I mean, to me it sounds like he's established a foundation. The heaven and earth, it's visible, and they're his creation, and they'll testify to his esteem.
But what has that got to do with us? Okay, here, this is the point. This is the point I'm trying to make. If we just try to conduct a Bible study, you read the verse in English, okay, at least you're reading it. But then you have to think, what's this trying to tell me? Now, if you go to a guy, pastor, or someone who's been to Bible college or seminary, they could say, oh yeah, we studied this and this. If you address the Talmud, which I have not done, but from what I understand, the Talmud, the Jewish writings, enough to fill 15 feet on a bookshelf, is that over the centuries, I mean, we can have conversations every single day. Imagine if we wrote them all down. Well, we made a bunch of videos, but same type of thing. But imagine if over the centuries, daily, the rabbis get together and talk about this stuff and say, what does it mean? What do we do with this? And somebody jots it down, and that becomes the Talmud, talking about Yahuwah's stuff. And they might have some answers to this very question. I don't know. Maybe somebody does. I don't know. But the only thing I can do with this This whole Erictology study thing is just looking at the spelling of words. And then trying to decide, can we make something of that? In other words, it doesn't matter what the doctrines are. It doesn't matter what the rabbis have said over the centuries. It doesn't matter whether it fits you might say, the doctrines of one Protestant denomination compared to another, or Orthodox compared to Catholic, compared to Islam, compared to Buddha. We're not comparing anything. We're just looking at the spelling of the words that are giving us this verse. So when he says that something's going to bear witness, the word for witness and testimony is spelled ayin dalet, ed. Plural, you put a vav tav, so it would be edot, and it might even sound like the word in English, edit, which is edit. I'm just making a phonetic correlation. The point is, the moedim is mem vav ayin dalet. Moedim are translated festivals, the ceremonial days. Yom Teruah, whether it was a couple days ago or 1 week hence, Yom Teruah is in this neighborhood of the year. So blow the trumpets. If you missed the last occasion at the sliver conjunction, blow it at the full moon. You'll be right in step with participating in the Moedim. But why is the word ayin dalet in the word moed? Moedim, the im is the plural. And whenever Yahweh says, you guys, speaking to Israel, collected 12 tribes. When he says, you guys have not been attending to my instructions, you've not listened to my voice, you've not kept my charge, or walked in my ways, or paid any attention to, and then there's this word, my testimonies, ayin dalet vav tav, edot. Well, what are those? I heard somebody say, oh, well, that's referring to the New Testament writings. It's like, those things came 1,000 years later, 1,500 years later. It might be the case that when Yahweh was saying, pay attention to these matters, and he always gives the same half a dozen. Chok, het kuf, het vav kuf is a rung on the ladder, but het kuf is what's translated as basically law or precept. Then you've got mishpat, which is judgments. Sometimes they call it ordinances. You've got the Torahs, or the teachings. You've got the, which other ones are there? It's like half a dozen. But basically then there's the edot, and it's just translated testimonies. Well, if you look at the Bible stories in the Old Testament, every one of them was written for a reason. I'm sure many other things happened, but the ones that were recorded happened for a reason, and there's a story in there. An ayin dalet, a testimony, a witness of something that Yahweh said. When his people did it, something beneficial happened, and when they didn't do it, something horrible happened. And all the stories basically have that reason about them. Why should the same word, ayin dalet, be in the word ayin moedim? And why should heaven and earth be called as a witness, an ayin dalet, against us if we're not keeping the words of the Torah? This whole thing about the study of words is that I found that the same Hebrew words in different translations, and even in one translation in different passages of the Scripture, they change the meaning of the words. Jeff Benner did a mechanical translation of, I believe he was going to do the whole Torah, maybe he's done more than that, but he was trying to keep one definition per word and use it consistently throughout so we can get a different bearing on what we're reading. Well, what I found is a little different. Sometimes you might have 3 or 4, or sometimes 10 different meanings to a word. And instead of then trying to pick the best word and keep it consistently every time it shows up, I try to expand the translation and say, how do you capture as many of those words as possible that might be this word you're looking at, because the English translation of what the real Hebrew word means is looking all around it. it's not it. The essence of what's at the heart, in the center, is only, you might say, hinted at or alluded to or pointed at by the different English translations. Pretty clearly there's you might say, a blessing and a curse, a positive and a negative in a lot of words. For example, the word Pesach, like Passover, literally means to jump over, but it also means to be lame so that you can't jump. Many Hebrew words work that way. It means one thing and its opposite. But then, like there's a particular word, Shinai and Resh, Sair, which is a gateway, but it's also a goat. It means horrible. It's a dark storm. It's where you measure and assess things, like at the gateway of a city. A number of other things too. And it's like, gosh, how do you make sure? Well, it's in the context. But what if people in doing the translation have pushed the context slightly aside? Again, if you're just looking in English, you might find one particular definition to be the best one. But by studying the language, the Hebrew language, the meaning of the letters, the use of especially I think Klein's dictionary, etymological dictionary is the best one I've ever seen. But the point is, it opens everything up so you can see these different aspects of what's going on. Why do we need to do that? Well, why are heaven and earth bearing witness? What does that even mean? I'm going to kick this up a little bit more complicated. Malachi 3:16. People look at the wicked and say they're prospering. I'm not calling anybody wicked or not, but I heard that ever since April, like Bill Gates' net worth is increased by 43 billion or something since the coronavirus hit. Gosh, why is that? Why do some people struggle like crazy and barely retain or slip backwards or just earning a monthly income or weekly daily wage, and yet other people $40 billion in the last couple months? Why is it that the wicked seem to prosper, is what it says in Malachi 3. I think the verse is 14 or 15. And then Yahweh says, well, what it says in Malachi is, those who feared or had a regard for Yahuwah got together and talked about his name. But here's another question. How do you talk about his name? What do you say? What's his name? How far can you get talking about his name? That's about it. Do you know his name? Well, for years, you go to church and you hear songs. You open up the King James Bible, it says right there, I am the Lord, that is my name. Okay, the Lord. What's his name? The Lord. Ask a Jew, what's his name? Hashem. What?
Come on, man. The thing.
The thing. Like Biden, he said.
You know.
You know.
How do you talk about his name? How do these people get together in Malachi 3, humans get together and talk about, how much can you say? Because the word name means something different. The word Shem, which is translated name, also means fame, renown, and reputation. And how do you discuss somebody's reputation? By witnesses. So something about the heavens and the earth that are bearing witness of what Yahweh said to Israel, holding Israel responsible for regarding his word and keeping his word, is mixed up in the heavens and the earth. How are they going to bear witness? What does it mean to think about his name? Well, let's look at the word Shemayim, heavens. Shin Mem is the word name. Yod Mem is a plural, but it's the word Shemot, like that's the translation of the book of Exodus, Shemot. Doesn't mean Exodus. Shemot means names. But see, the Vav Tav suffix is masculine. Actually, Shemot is feminine suffix, and Shemayim is the masculine suffix, but it's just plural. So if you look at these stars up in the sky, they're places, and they've got names. That's the word Shemayim. The word Shem also means place, and it means Name, what do you call it? You know, the thing. What do you know about the thing? Well, what you know about the thing is its fame, renown, and reputation, not just its name. So when you say, well, the heavens are just those dots that seem to stay in a certain place that have a name or a certain reputation about them, and of course they were put into constellations. It's another whole study we're going to get into, maybe even Thursday, maybe, we'll see. But what I'm saying is that the word heavens just isn't talking about up there. It's talking about reputation and location, what you're known for. And the word aretz, Aleph Resh Zadi, well, the word Resh Zadi, rats, means to run like rats. Resh Zadi also means to be on a course, like a courier on a course, like a FedEx truck that makes a certain lap, or a postal worker, mailman, going on a certain route. A newspaper delivery kid who throws a newspaper on a certain route. That's Resh Zadi. So Aleph Resh Zadi, aretz. If Aleph is the prefix indicating first person intention and identity, that means I am or I will run. I will run this course. That's the word aretz. Run what course? The whole concept, the hypothesis behind this erectology study of the Hebrew is that the 22 letters are the communication from the Aleph. Whoever it is that wrote Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Zadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav. Whoever wrote that is the Aleph, is the one represented by the Aleph. And when the Aleph represents I am or I will, it's referring to the one who is projecting this communication. So I can sit there and say, well, if humans invented the alphabet, then I don't know who it was. In fact, nobody knows who it was. The world's greatest Semitic scholars who study language at large, not just the Semitic alphabet, they say, it is said in academia that the invention of the Hebrew alphabet, the Semitic language, is the greatest invention ever on the face of the earth. It changed everything to be able to communicate, and it was more important than a computer, than an automobile, than a gun. It's the wheel. It's the greatest invention ever developed. They don't even know who's responsible. They can point back to at least Phoenicia, the city of Byblos, but it goes back behind that. It wasn't started there, but something was done there. Those guys were friends of Solomon. So the concept is that Moshe certainly developed it before Byblos by hundreds of years. Because the people in Byblos, they were Phoenicians, but long story short, the Phoenicians were actually Israelites who lost their identity and became known as commercial traders and labeled Phoenicians from the Greeks, but they were actually Israelites who had gone astray and lost their identity and got scattered across the face of the earth. That's a different tangent, but what I'm trying to say is the Phoenicians didn't invent this. The fact that we talk about the Mishkan pattern in Exodus 25, where it says Tabanit Mishkan. The word Tabanit, Tav, Bet, Nun, Yod, Tav. Well, the word Bet, Nun, Yod is Beni, which means my son. The letter Tav is an X, which is like signing up for a contract. So you can have, I'm showing you the picture of the word, Tav, like two signers of a contract, and in between, so it's mediating the two signatories of some kind of agreement contract, is my son. Well, I could look at that and say, well, that must be Yeshua, his son. But it might also be Israel, because Yahweh said, Israel is my firstborn son. And he even talked about Ephraim, one tribe of Israel, being his firstborn. Well, it's one tribe, but it also represented the northern 10 tribes. And it's like, so we have these mixtures of all these meanings and definitions going on from the Hebrew to the English. And that's one reason why there's so many denominations and confusions and different translations and different words and dictionaries and concordances because of all this matter. So where do you find the ultimate testimony of what's what? What's true? And if all this stuff is so ambiguous, how can any of us be held responsible for whether you're on track with the truth or whether you know the truth? What if there was something in heaven and earth? Again, look at the word heaven, names and places, locations, identity, and then I will run. Well, who will run? As far as we know, this life, once we're born on it and have consciousness, it's like, oh, stuff I got to do. I got to make my bed, brush my teeth, go to school, get some decent grades, and find a job. And is that the race we're supposed to run? Really? Is that the gamut of life? It's summertime. Better get wood ready. Winter's coming. It's going to be cold. Then
Got it all done.
Well, I'm saying that's just another task.
Yep.
Another task to do. Is that the race? Well, wait a second. What if the race, the gamut, the obstacle course, is found in the letters of the alphabetic sequence itself? What if that's the race that Aleph is going to run? So if Yahuwah Zavot, the Almighty, El Elyon, Most High, El Shaddai, which is translated Almighty, the provider of all benefits, the destroyer of all opposition, if he is referring to himself, and we could talk about the gender label he, but if he's referring to himself, then when you look at this alphabetic sequence, if he's the Aleph, then Bet is the first order of business that he's going to do. Bet happens to be the first letter of the word Bereshit. So the first letter of the first word in the first book, the first sentence of the whole scripture is the letter Bet, which means to manifest as some type of container. A box, a house, a tent, a body, a universe. It's all Bet. Even a concept that you can identify is a Bet. Bet is something that you can look at, label it, and stand here and inspect it from different directions. But Aleph, you can't. Aleph is something undefinable. Aleph is so big that fills everything, you can't get back far enough to say what it is. So Aleph is by default what's not Bet. What is Bet is here in this universe. Farthest we can see is the stars. Are they on like a stretched out firmament dome-like tent, or they go on for infinity? Or is the dome-like tent really thick, like an infinite number of light years of thickness? People have different ideas. My point is that outside the furthest extent of the universe is the Aleph Zone. Everything this side of Aleph is Bet. And so if Aleph is the first letter, which is the identity, the intent of whoever that is, and says Bet. Okay, then I can look at that and say, well, that's the maker, sustainer of, and the one who engages the universe. It's the Bet zone. And then Gimel. Gimel is camel, but it means like a neck, connects the mouth to the stomach. You eat something, you swallow it, and so it goes down the throat. It's a highway between two cities. It's the truck on the highway, taking goods and services back and forth. It's traversing. So Gimel talks about a connection to what? Dalet. So there's different ways to read the alphabet. I can read this as a sequence, like Aleph is going to Bet, then Gimel, then it's going to Dalet, then it's going to Hey, then it's going to Vav and Zion and Het. Those are the first 8 letters. And it's like, yeah, but what if there's another way to read them? Aleph made Bet, and then Aleph's going to put him itself into a Bet mode. What? He can't do that. Says who? Well, he wouldn't do that. Says who? If Aleph is the one on the other side of Bet, and Bet is the making of this, could it be that Aleph is saying, hey, I'm going to put somehow that he's not telling us, or maybe he did, maybe that's another thing to read, put himself into the Bet mode, the Bet. He's going to put himself, the one who can't be contained is going to put himself into a container and Gimel to the earth, from the Aleph zone to the Bet zone, Gimling to the earth, which is Dalet. Whoa. Since when did earth mean Dalet? Dalet is a door. Oh, so he comes into the universe, into the material universe through the door of the earth, being born as a baby. So the letter Bet looks like an embryo, not just a tent. Gosh, that sets up a whole story. Is he actually saying that he's going to put himself in some sort of embryonic space suit to come into the place of time and space from beyond time and space, where time and space aren't even a consideration? But he who invented time and space is going to put on some kind of Earth suit in a fetal projectile, gimmeling to Dalet the Earth. Hey! The next letter, hey, behold, Vav, man. Well, it never says Vav is a man, but Vav is the number 6. Vav is the masculine suffix. If you have the Vav at the end of the word, it means he or it. If it's a hey at the end of the word, it's a feminine suffix, meaning she or hers. What I'm saying is that this whole study is a way of looking at the alphabet itself and thinking, trying to wrap our minds around this. Why would we do that? Because if the Elohim who built the universe is the one who's referred to by the Aleph, I am, and I will now do this, then that means that the Hebrew alphabet is that mysterious, unmentioned word in John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word. And so we've discussed this before, that I believe that word is the Hebrew alphabet. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim. Well, the word with is the prefix letter bet. So somehow this word is a bet version of Elohim, but the word is Elohim. Well, the isness is kind of the Aleph state. The word that means I, Anoki, or Ani, or Ehie, or Ata, or Ati, Ata is actually you, but Aleph Tav Yod means my, it's first person possessive. Well, those all start with the letter Aleph, even in English. Artist, administrator, author, those are words that start with A. And so there's something about this responsible party that just is the A, the Aleph, big, strong ox. Aleph is an ox. But, okay, so if he's going to start off with Aleph and make this place bet, and he says, the places with names, the identification of location and name. Oh, Shemayim. Wait a minute. Each letter of the alphabet is in a place of a sequence with a name. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. I went through the order in the beginning of this video. Those are identifying places and names of established fixtures. It's essentially the word Shemayim. And if he says, I'm going to run this race, I'm going to run this obstacle course, Aleph through Tav, then it's like, well, that's the word Eretz. Wait a minute. I could look at the Hebrew alphabet and say, in a way, for him to say, the heavens and the earth are going to bear witness against you if you break the vow of our agreement and don't do the things I said, I could say, well, that's like the letters of the Hebrew alphabet are going to bear witness. Mm-hmm. Now I'm mixing things, but what does the heavens and the earth have to do with the Hebrew alphabet? An interesting thing about the letters, they're basically being the word of John 1:1. The Hebrew alphabet, the 22 letters, is essentially the equivalent of the periodic table of elements that chemists use. The way the periodic table of elements is set up, there's approximately 200 elements that people have discovered at this point. And the only difference between any element is hydrogen has 1 electron. Okay? No, excuse me, helium. Hydrogen has 2. And then the next one has 3, the next one has 4. Oxygen has 6. I know a couple of them, I think. No, carbon has 6, oxygen has 8. I don't know. So my point is, the only difference between every element, and some are metal and some are gas and some are woo-woo stuff, nuclear, just one more element. One more electron changes the element. Some electrons have one more proton, some don't. But I'm saying the only difference is one more thing added. One more electron. Another electron changes the whole element. Each letter differs because it's one step removed from the previous, and then another step. The fact that there's the 22 letters in sequence the whole erectology study is that it was not invented by human beings. So right off the bat, just so you know, it disagrees with all the modern secular or even ecclesiastical, meaning church-oriented teachers of the Semitic language. They think that it was invented by humans. I don't think so. Why? Because the Mishkan pattern, Exodus 25, my son mediating the signatories of the covenant, but also the Mishkan, the tabernacle, big white fence, barbecue grill, wash basin, those were on the outside. Then inside the covered place there was menorah, table of showbread, altar of incense. Then there's the veil and the Kadosh Kodashim, known as the Holy of Holies, the most set apart place. Ark of the Covenant. Okay, and then when Elohim was present, there would be this, at least in the book of Exodus, there's this pillar of fire, pillar of smoke. Why do I mention that? Well, that kind of lines up with the letter Kuf, the letter Het, the big white fence, letter Zadi, Ark of the Covenant. That's a whole other story we talked about. What I'm saying is that each piece lines up with the letters of the alphabet, giving those letters bearing that have nothing to do with the secular consideration of what the letters of the Semitic language mean. And the fact that they coincide exactly to the 7 days of creation and the 7 Moedim means that the letters were invented from Yahweh because those are his claims to fame. The 7 days of creation, the 7 Moedim, 8 if you count the day of Shabbat, and the design of the Mishkan. Those were all his stuff. And because they're at the heart of identifying the meaning of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, then the Hebrew alphabet was his baby, his design. It's not a human origin. So therefore, if he's saying, this is the stuff I'm going to do, boom, 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 and there's 22, then that's his places of him running, that's heavens and earth, that's his Shem. So going back to Malachi 3:16, those people who got together and contemplated, discussed my Shem, they're not just saying, hey, how about that word Lord? How about that word Hashem? Like I said, how far can you go with that? Or even if you kicked it up a notch and said, how about Yahweh? You're not allowed to say that if you're Jewish. And the Jews say that even if some filthy infidel, like they might suppose that I am, were to utter it, there's a death curse on anybody who mentions that name. Just so you know, this is not something to be toyed with lightly. Anybody who mentions a sacred name, according to Jewish law, from what I understand, can be and ought to be put to death, executed. Which is why they supposedly killed Yeshua.
Can I go and see what's going on upstairs?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So the idea that I'm suggesting that Elohim's Shem is actually these 22 letters and what they mean individually, why they're named what they're named, and why they're placed in the sequential order is not only, if it was the word that was from John 1:1, not only is it just the word that he associates his identity and what he's going to do, his plan, his intent with, but also, remember in John 1:1 it says, in the beginning was the Word was with Elohim, and the Word is Elohim. And then he uses this word, I'm going to jump ahead a few verses, and he projects his will, his desire, which actually one way to spell that word is Aleph Bet Hey. His Aleph Bet Hey, or revealed or expresses through this word, and out comes the physical universe. Everything we see, plants, animals, rocks, metals, stars, everything, invisible, visible, as a projected construct of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And then this word went through itself. The word went through itself to become projected into the physical universe and became a human. Is that possible? Why do the Jews say that it's not? If Elohim, who can do anything, makes a word through which he can project his avah, his Aleph Bet Hey, his will, his desire, his passion, his energy, and whoom, here comes the physical universe. And if the pinnacle of all creation is the human being, which the last thing he made on day 6, man, and then the very last thing, woman, the absolute pinnacle of all creation, Then the word itself went through the word and became, as a fetus, as an embryo, through a bet through the woman to enter this cosmic material realm. He could do that if he wanted to, especially if it lays it out in the letters. Well, then what's going to happen to him? Well, there's the story of Yeshua. He come in disguise. Hey, Vav Zion. Pilate said, behold this man. So that's him. They put him to the Roman weapon, crucified him, threw him in the tomb. Het Tet Yod. He's in there 3 days and 3 nights. Kaf Lamed, Mem Nun, Samak Ayin Pei. Zadi resurrected. Kuf ascended. Kuf Reshin Tav is going to come back, gather his betrothed, and into the by and by of another type of universe, of another dimension that we're not told about. That's
it.
Quickly, that's reading the Hebrew alphabet. But my point is, so if I understand that Yeshua claimed to be the door, no one gets through the Father except by me, through me, then I can say, oh, gee, do I go to turn to Jesus and say, will you please let me in? Or why is the word ayin dalet, the word witness and testimony? That's what we're talking about. Interestingly enough, you flip the 2 letters around, dalet ayin, it's the word knowledge, to know. Do you know the testimony? If Yeshua claimed, nobody gets into my Father's place except through me, you better know him, so you better ayin that dalet, because if that dalet don't ayin you, you're not getting in. So Yeshua's putting himself right in that capacity of this ayin dalet thing. And if the witnesses and testimonies are these letters, and if these very letters became him, and if these very letters became what is the physical and unphysical material universe, then that means just like elements, you bond hydrogen and oxygen together, even though they're both gases, and boom, you got water. If you heat up water, you can separate them, and you get oxygen and hydrogen again. Everything that exists in this universe is somehow a construct of the various elements, the 200 of the periodic table of elements. But so too, everything that exists is a construct of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. That means even the stars in the sky are built according to what each of the 22 letters mean and how they interact with each other, whatever that means, which is a bigger part of the study. So too everything on earth. This metal, this wood, this dirt, these rocks, this water, it's all held together by the 22 letters. Now, if one of those 22 letters was to be eliminated or its place removed, some people talk about there being a Paleo-Hebrew letter looking like a knot, a weaving of strings, which they call the Ghayin, which is similar to Chayin, the letter Ayin, which is an eyeball, and they think, well, there was another letter. I don't think so. That's a different story. We could talk about that later, but what I'm saying is I don't think there was another missing letter to the 22 Hebrew alphabet. I don't think so, and I've got reason we could discuss for that, but I'm just saying that if you were to add letters, take away letters, move letters around in their sequence. I remember seeing a video of some Jewish guy. He learned the alphabet, and he says, oh, I found reason to believe there was some artifact that the letter Ayin and Pei were switched and removed. I don't think so. I don't think so because they line up with the Moedim. They line up with the days of creation. And the Mishkan, that's what locks them in. It's not just some ancient Canaanites or Phoenicians who happen to, hey, we'll take one of those and one of these and one of these, and we'll stick them in order. Oh, here, let's change the order, and this guy's going to change the order. Objects, there's a house, there's a ox, there's a camel, there's a door, there's a fish hook. It's like it wasn't about that. It was established by Yahuwah. So as we're contemplating the letters and realizing that everything's right where it belongs, these 22 letters in sequence, lining up with Psalms 119, Proverbs 31, which hopefully we'll get to in a moment here. The point is, you change anything, the star might disappear. The wood might disappear. The metal might melt. It's the 22 letters that hold everything together. The fact that he sustains what they are, what they're called, where they're placed, and how they all work together is what keeps heaven and the earth in existence. And if you could eliminate one little, like the word yod, if it was jot and tittle, it's kind of like the word iota is where we get the word jot, the J, and the I, where both came out of the Y sound of the yod. So it's a blend of English and Greek and Hebrew. But it's basically the dot of the I or the crossbar of the T, tittle. And whether jots and tittles are these other flourishes in the writing of Hebrew or the anomalies in the text, big letters, little letters, upside down letters that are in the Hebrew text, could be any one of the three. But the point is, if you change even the smallest dot or mark or flourish, heaven and earth would no longer be what they are. And as long then as he is sustaining the functional existence, and when I say functional existence of the heavens and the earth, what holds the earth in its orbit? If it's a globe, tipped at a certain amount, spinning and going through, and if the sun's moving and the earth is going like this, it's like, what? There's all these forces and everything's being held in a perfect balance. Is the sun static and the earth flying around like this? Supposedly not. Supposedly if the sun's moving, the earth is going in a spiral around. Maybe it's flat with a dome. The point is, whatever it is, it works. And if one thing was changed, it would all come apart and disravel. So Yeshua is saying, because everything is built on the true validity and trustworthiness of these 22 letters, then the fact that heaven and the earth are in existence is proof that it works. And therefore, because the instructions, the chok, the Torot, the testimonies, the moedim that we were given, the mishpat that we were given, everything he told us, built on these 22 letters, is so solid, is so real, is so functionally appropriate that everything he told us to do, if we did it, something great would happen. And if we don't do it, something horrible is going to happen. And we can say, how do we know it works? Because look, the heavens and the earth are working. You hear those crickets singing? That's proof that the Torah is true. Can you trust the English and the Greek? Well, if not, you can certainly trust the Hebrew, because the Hebrew is the most primitive first order, foundational level, but it's also the pinnacle. The word Rosh, Resh Aleph Shin, literally means foundational, first order, but also most supreme pinnacle at the height. That's what the Hebrew alphabet is. And so the understanding of the Hebrew alphabet is to get to understand the truth of astronomy, of oceanography, of psychology, of philosophy, of history, of the scriptures themselves, of Yahuwah himself. Getting back to how do we know it's a he, in Exodus 3, Moshe said, who shall I say sent me? Tell them, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. Translated, I am that I am, I will be what I will be. But also he said, tell them Ehyeh sent you. Okay, got it. Ehyeh sent me. Wait, one more thing. Yahuwah, Yod He Vav He, is, as he says, his Shem Zakar, for generation after generation. Well, the word Zakar, Zayin Kaf Resh, literally means memorial, to commemorate, to remember, to stick in your mind. Yeah, it'll keep coming back to your mind. But it also means masculine, male, M-A-L-E. It means like a knife blade or a shovel, something that you pierce the earth to plant a seed planting tool. A masculine apparatus seed planting tool is his Shem Zakar, Yahuwah. So if Yod He Vav He, Yahuwah, is the masculine regard, masculine reference, why does it end with a He, Yod He Vav He? The He is the feminine suffix. If it was Yahu, Yod He Vav, that's the masculine suffix. Like the book Yeshayahu, known as Isaiah, or Yeremiyahu, Jeremiah. It's not Yeremiyahuah, it's Yeremiyahu. Sometimes it's just say Yeshayah. So what I'm saying is that why are we kicking around all this stuff about his name and looking at all these possibilities? Because he said in Malachi 3:16, those who get together and think about, talk about, meditate, try to analyze his name, he's going to write their names in a book right in front of him, right on his table right there. And on the day that he reveals his greatest treasure, you'll see the difference between the wicked who care nothing of his stuff and those who make it their business, their pastime, they put their energy. And we could be watching TV right now. No, but we're talking about Yahweh's name. We're talking about his stuff. So how far can you go with that? What I'm suggesting is if you talk about the Aleph Bet, the meaning of the letters, why they're in that sequence, and all the different things they can mean, you're in the process of thinking about Yahweh's name, which entitles you to be written in that book, especially if you call up a friend and talk to him, or you watch a video. And that the heavens and the earth bearing witness is to realize that those 22 letters are all talking about Yahuwah, are all talking about Yeshua, are all talking about the covenant relationship between Elohim and Israel, and are also talking about the functional processes that the universe enlists in order to even exist, as does any human. Those are all, though, depending on how you read the meaning of the letters. And there's all these different ways you can read the meaning of the letters. Real quick, how much time we got here?
Yeah, you got a couple more minutes.
I was going to look at Proverbs 30:1. Do I have like 10
Better
or 15?
save that for another one.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me set this up so you know what I'm talking about here. In Proverbs 31, it says something about a virtuous woman, a valiant woman. In Hebrew, the word is Ashat Chayil, Aleph Shin Tav, Het Yod Lamed. Okay, so you read that in English, and that's a virtuous woman. Why does it start with that phrase, Ashat Chayil? Well, because in Hebrew, it starts with the letter Aleph. And Ashat, Aleph Het Tav, is actually the word for wife. So it's a valiant wife. And the word Chayil is the same, like in German, where they have the word Heil, as in Heil Hitler. It's that word. It means to join the military. It means to enlist as the completely dedicated to the forces, the objective of the Führer, the boss, the president, the king, whoever it is that you're in allegiance to. But it's a military term. But Het Lamed, it's spelled Het Yod Lamed. Het Yod means life, L-I-F-E, and Het Lamed means profane and vile. It's like, well then, how do you get the word to join the military out of the word that's containing the word for life and profanity? And what's that got to do with a woman who's a wife? But if you look at the word spelled Aleph Shin Tav, Aleph again meaning I am or I will, Aleph Shin is the word fire, and Shin Tav is S-H-T sound where you get the word sit and set, and it also means to get drunk or intoxicated. So when you are when you're so drunk that your whole face just turns to S-H-T, to you could say that's Aleph Shin Tav. What's that got to do with a wife? That's the problem with doing this kind of a study. So the other interesting thing is, if you get to the next verse, the first word in the verse is Bet Tet Het, which literally has to do with making great efforts, trusting with absolute confidence, and having to do with engaged at a task with a lot of effort, like a miller who's grinding grain. There's nothing easy about hands-on farm work. It takes a great conscious effort and a lot of time spent at it. It's not like just going to the grocery store and buying what you need. We have it easy compared to what this word is referring to. The next word, Gimel Mem Lamed Tav He Vav. Gam La Tahoe. Tahoe? Gimmeling to Tahoe? That's like driving north a couple hours and going up to the lake here in California. Traveling to Tahoe. But literally the word Tahoe means Nothingness in Gimel Mem is a heap, like a big pile of nothing. But it also has to do with repay, reward, recompense, pension. And Mem Lamed Tav He Vav has to do with a large caravan. What do we do with all this stuff? Well, we'll make another video about this, but what I'm saying is that I just chose to do this study taking each one of the 22 first words that are in that Proverbs 31. Ashat Chayil, Batach, Gimelataho, Drasha, Hayata, Vatakam, Zamama, Chagra, Ta'ameh, Yidya, Kafa. That's the kaf. So these are the first words of each one of those verses talking about the valiant woman. Well, the thing is, this isn't necessarily a gender-specific chapter, because the covenant relationship between Yahweh and Israel is that he was the masculine personage, you might say, and Israel was the feminine. He talks about Israel being his firstborn son, but he also talks about Israel being his woman, his wife, his betrothed. And so any one of us could plug our own selves into this list of 22 words and say, gosh, how do I measure up? That's another way to read the alphabet in these words. It's another way then to say, well, we're not just studying Hebrew, we're not just studying Proverbs 31, because we're equating all these words with all these letters to Yahweh himself as his Shem, his name, his place, his communication. Then as we look at these 22 words, we're studying him, we're contemplating his Shem. This is just another way to do it. It's a way to look at stuff that's written in Scripture and wrap our minds around it as if it was written in some sort of secret code. We did the same thing with Psalm 119. I think we made a video about that. We could always address that again. That's pretty complicated. There's 22 sub-chapters within the chapter of Psalm 119. Each one of them has 8 verses, subheaded by the next progressive letter of the alphabet. So there's 8 verses under Aleph, 8 verses under Bet, 8 verses under Gimel. And the interesting thing in Hebrew is that the first word of each verse starts with the letter of that group. So there's 8 words starting with the letter Aleph, which are the first word of 8 verses. Then there's 8 words, each starting with the letter Bet, which is the first word of the verses in the next 8 verses, and so forth. And so we did a study of saying, what if you could read just the first words and string them together as a sentence? Well, what if we could do that with these 22 words in Proverbs 31, which we'll do on another video. So what if we could read a sentence, and the sentence was, Ashat Chayil B'tach Gam Lataho Drasha Hayata Ve'takam Zamama Chagra Ta'ama Yidya Kafe, verse 11. Well, if you know the proper syntax of Hebrew, that probably doesn't read as a sentence, but the way Hebrew works is that the letters are like a string of pearls. There's this beautiful one here, then there's this one, then there's this one. So the construct of Hebrew sentences is just like the construct of the Hebrew alphabet. You've got 22 placed, and now you got to figure out how to tie them together, like a string of pearls. Like a row of forts out on a frontier. It's ciphering, connecting the dots, connecting the words, and then wrapping your mind around it, and somehow it's a revelation of Yeshua. Somehow it's a revelation of Yahweh himself, of his intention to engage humanity, and it's a description of, hey, here's a valiant woman who's one of his chayil, who, this is the way I tied that one together. Aleph, I will, Shin Tav, drink intoxicated by life's profane secular vileness, but I will set my passion militarily, join the colors, fully engaged. The word Zavot, Yahuwah Zavot, Zadi Bet Aleph Vav Tav, is translated Master of Legions. It's this array of military forces. The word for a beautiful woman is that same two letters, Zadi Bet. Zavot is Zadi Bet Aleph Vav Tav. This is Zadi Bet Yod, gazelle, beautiful woman. Zadi Bet Aleph, standing army. Zadi Yod Bet, fiber or rebar or something that has substance that's strong. Zadi Bet Hey, to be willing, to be wish, to desire and to swell. Very similar to the word Aleph Bet, to have this desire. That's Zadi Bet Hey. Zadi Bet Yod Vav Nun. Zavion is form or character, will, nature, or pleasure. So how do we have a Zavion that fulfills Yahweh's pleasure and his will for having invented this whole place? Contemplate his alphabet as the mechanics, the construct fibers of the entire universe. So we're doing this to play into the, you might say, the higher reality of truth and significance, playing into the eternity of the world to come, where Yahweh says, I'll show you what's important to me. These people that thought that my stuff was pretty important and worth looking at, that it was interesting, when we could have been doing anything else. But what else there is there that could possibly compare to contemplating Yahuwah and what he's made and who we are and how we relate to him, all through the dynamics of the way these letters engage each other? It's a map. It's a fractal pattern. So that's why we're doing all this.
Sounds good to me. That was quite an extrapolation.
Extrapolation? You've been waiting all day to use that word.
Oh, I've been saving it up. All right. Another video tomorrow.
There you
Stay
go.
tuned.
Shalom.
Shalom.